Like I said earlier, they actually had odds that, she was like third or fourth in the betting odds to be MVP of the WNBA. That's such a slap in the face to every WNBA player. It's unbelievable, right?
Some wars aren't fought with cannons, but with silence. Power isn't always seized with a roar. Sometimes it's taken with a single quiet word. For years, Geno Auriemma sat on the throne of women's basketball, a king who decided who mattered and who faded into obscurity. But he made one fatal mistake. He dismissed the one player who could burn his kingdom to the ground. And when he finally came crawling back, checkbook in hand, her revenge was swift, silent, and utterly devastating.
That's the worst part about new fans. They have no perspective. There's no context. So they just say ridiculous nonsense.
It all started with a ghosting. Before the sold-out arenas and the record-breaking TV deals, Caitlin Clark was a teenager with a dream, and that dream was UConn. It was the coolest place on earth, the home of legends, the mountaintop of the sport, but the greatest recruiter in the history of the game never bothered to pick up the phone. Geno Auriemma's excuse was that he already had his star, but then came the insult that planted the seed of revenge. He claimed that if Clark really wanted to be a Husky, she should have called him. Think about that. The king demanded a teenager chase him for a spot at his table. It wasn't a recruiting miss. It was a message of pure disrespect, and Clark never forgot it.
The delusional fan base that follows her disrespected the WNBA players by saying she's going to go in that league and tear it apart. There were actually odds on she's third or fourth in betting odds on being MVP of the WNBA. These people are so disrespectful and so unknowledgeable and so stupid that it gives women's basketball a bad name. Okay, so the kid was set up for failure right from the beginning.
So she chose a different path. Instead of joining Geno's empire, she decided to build her own in the cornfields of Iowa. To the outside world, it looked like a consolation prize. In reality, it was a declaration of war. Every logo 3 wasn't just a shot, it was a statement. Every broken record wasn't just an achievement, it was a receipt. She became a phenomenon on her own terms, proving she didn't need his dynasty, his approval, or his validation to become the biggest star the sport had ever seen. While Geno polished trophies in stores, Clark was rewriting the future of the game from Iowa City.
And Diana said it best, this kid's in for a rude awakening.
At the heart of Geno's dismissal was a choice he had already made. He had his chosen one, Paige Bueckers, a phenomenal talent he believed was the perfect heir to the UConn throne. In his mind, the narrative was set. Paige was the polished floor general, the player molded in the image of his system. Caitlin was the outsider, the flashy shooter from the Midwest playing driveway basketball. By locking in on Bueckers, Geno wasn't just picking a player, he was picking a philosophy. And that philosophy had no room for a generational force of nature who refused to fit into a pre-existing mold. He created a rivalry that only existed in his head, a desperate attempt to prove his judgment was still flawless.
And there's a lot of investors in this league. One investor, been trying to keep quiet about, his investment in the league ever since his comments that he made about a young rookie. Pretty much, had him in the headlines for about a month and a half. That is Geno Auriemma, dog. I'm here to tell you, he's part owner of this league.
As Clark's fame exploded, Geno couldn't stand to be out of the spotlight. He resorted to a strategy of subtle sabotage. In interviews, he'd offer praise wrapped in a put-down, constantly tethering her success back to his own players. If Clark was great, it was only because Paige Bueckers was great too. He was trying to shrink her brilliance, to frame her as just another product of a system he still controlled. But the world was watching, and they could see his backhanded compliments for what they really were. The desperate whispers of a king who felt his throne begin to shake. The more he talked, the more obvious his insecurity became.
So it looked like Geno Auriemma could be the reason why Caitlin Clark is definitely not joining the unrivaled 3-on-3 basketball league.
To understand Geno's obsession, you have to understand his ego. For decades, he was more than a coach. He was the gatekeeper. Greatness in women's basketball flowed through him. He discovered the talent. He molded the champions, and he built the empire. His entire legacy was built on the idea that he was indispensable. Then came Caitlin Clark, a player who achieved supernova status entirely outside his orbit. Her success wasn't just a threat to his current team, it was a threat to his entire worldview. It proved the sport could not only survive without him, but it could thrive in ways he never imagined. And that was a truth his blinding arrogance could never accept.
They've tried to do everything they could to make the most of the situation. They tried to make the most of Caitlin Clark not playing by hinting everything and basically making people think that Caitlin Clark was going to play.
Then the mask didn't just slip, it shattered. During a June 2024 interview on the Dan Patrick Show, Geno's simmering resentment boiled over. He stopped taking shots at Clark and aimed his fire at the source of her power, her fans. He called the millions of new viewers she brought to the sport delusional. He claimed their belief that she could be a top MVP candidate as a rookie was damaging women's basketball. He wasn't just questioning her talent anymore, he was attacking the entire movement she had built, a movement that was making him increasingly irrelevant. The backlash was instant and unforgiving. This wasn't just fans on Twitter getting angry, it was a firestorm across the sports world. Respected analysts and former players immediately called out Geno's comments for what they were bitter, out of touch, and profoundly disrespectful. They pointed out the hypocrisy of the sport's most famous coach attacking the very audience that was driving unprecedented growth. Instead of welcoming the new energy, he was mocking it. His words weren't seen as analysis, they were seen as the last gasps of an old king trying to discredit the revolution happening right outside his castle walls. What happened next was pure poetry. Caitlin Clark didn't respond on social media. She didn't fire back in interviews. She responded on the court, the only place that mattered. She went out and won Rookie of the Year in a landslide. She was named to the All-WNBA First Team, an honor reserved for the absolute elite. And when the final MVP votes were tallied, she finished in 4th place, the exact position Geno Auriemma had publicly mocked as a delusional fantasy. The fans he insulted were vindicated, the player he dismissed was triumphant, and the king was proven to be a fool. With that one result, Geno's credibility was torched. His analysis was exposed as bitter, insecure, and embarrassingly wrong. Every take he had made about Clark aged like milk in the sun. He had positioned himself as the wise elder of the sport, the only one who truly understood the game. But Clark's performance proved that the so-called delusional fans knew more than he did. She didn't have to say a word. Her success was a constant, humiliating reminder that he had been wrong about everything, and the entire world knew it. But a cornered king is a dangerous one. Realizing he could no longer control the narrative with his words, Geno made one final desperate play. A new 3-on-3 league called Unrivaled was launching, founded by 2 of his former UConn stars, with Geno pulling strings behind the scene. It had big names and big money, but it was missing the one thing it needed to survive a true superstar. It needed the very phenomenon he had spent years trying to downplay. It needed Caitlin Clark. And so, the ultimate humiliation began. The Unrivaled League, with Geno's influence all over it, offered Caitlin Clark a contract worth over $1 million for just 8 weeks of play. Let that sink in. The man who wouldn't even give her a phone call as a teenager was now part of a group begging her to save his new venture. He needed her fans, the ones he called delusional, to buy tickets. He needed her hype, the hype he claimed was fake, to sell his league to the world. It wasn't a business offer, it was a white flag of surrender. The rejection of that offer didn't just cost Geno his pride, it cost him millions in potential revenue. With Caitlin Clark as its face, Unrivaled could have secured massive TV deals, attracted top-tier sponsors like Nike and Gatorade, and sold out arenas across the country. The Clark effect was a proven goldmine, capable of generating tens of millions in economic impact. By turning him down, Clark didn't just deny him her talent, she denied him access to the entire financial empire she commanded. His arrogance years earlier had led to a catastrophic financial miscalculation that would cripple his new league before it even began. Clark's response was the final killing blow. There was no negotiation, no public statement, no drama, just a simple devastating no. That one word carried more weight than all of Geno's condescending interviews combined. It was a declaration that she didn't need his money, his platform, or his validation. He had once made her feel like an afterthought, and now, when he needed her most, she turned him away with the same cold indifference he had once shown her. That single word was a master class in silent execution. It cut deeper than any clapback ever could. She didn't have to drag him online or expose him in the media. Her rejection did all the work for her. By simply walking away, she showed the world just how desperate he had become. She didn't burn the bridge. She simply let him stand on it alone as it crumbled beneath his feet. Her silence wasn't empty. It was filled with the power of a player who knew her own worth and knew he had no part in it. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Without Clark, the unrivaled league's buzz evaporated. The $1 million offer became a public joke, a symbol of Geno's weakness and desperation. Social media erupted, clowning him for believing the player he disrespected would ever throw him a lifeline. The chess match he thought he was playing ended in a checkmate so clean, so final, that he was left with nothing. He had lost the game, the crown, and his dignity, all in one swift, silent move. This story is bigger than basketball. It marks the death of the gatekeeper era. For decades, men like Geno Auriemma decided who got to be a star. But Caitlin Clark shattered that system. She built her own platform, drew her own crowd, and wrote her own rule. In rejecting his money, she sent a message to an entire generation of athletes. You don't need their permission to be powerful. The old king is dead, and the new queen torched his throne without ever speaking his name. Do you think Geno deserved it? Let us know down in the comments.